Hey guys, Caleb here. Sorry it's been a while since I've put something up, but it's just been a kind of a hectic few weeks here for me. Been looking for work and all that good stuff, and trying to help my dad as much as I can with working for him on his job sites, where he does construction work and stuff. So good stuff. But today we're going to be talking about two albums that got released this past week: Between the Buried and Me's Automata 2, Deafheaven's Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. A couple of really good albums that have been put out. And I also want to address the state of metal over the last few weeks, because just because I haven't been putting things up on YouTube does not mean I have quit listening to metal. And I have been pawing through the sea of our genre looking for something to listen to, and to be honest, it's been a little disappointing, just a little disappointing over the last few weeks. But hey, I mean, you're going to hit lulls in a year, and this is one of those lulls. Immortal put out Northern Chaos Gods. Took a listen to part of it. Really run-of-the-mill black metal, just kind of boring. Not terrible, but just sort of there. And, you know, over the last few weeks, we've had a lot of albums released that have just kind of been there. Bullet for My Valentine, nothing special. Immortal, nothing special. Devil Driver's Country covers album, nothing really special there. So, if I had to give albums a score there, I would give them probably 60 to 65 out of 100 on the YPS scale. But like I said, it's a lull right now, and it's a lull that I'm really hoping that we are starting to get out of as far as our genre is concerned. Deafheaven, Between the Buried and Me, coming out with a couple of really good albums this week. You got Powerwolf coming out with some stuff next week. Behemoth and Deicide have some stuff coming out down the road. Epica is going to have, hopefully, a killer EP of Attack on Titan covers. Love symphonic metal, and I love Attack on Titan. So those two mashed up is just like heaven for me. So, should be some good stuff there. But without further ado, let's get into it. To get things started, I'm going to go over Deafheaven's Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, which was, of course, released this past Friday. Great album. Anybody that knows me knows that I love atmosphere in music, and Deafheaven is one of those bands that they threw just the right amount of atmosphere into this album. It wasn't like the Arcona album back in February, where it was too much atmosphere, and it wasn't so little atmosphere that it could just barely qualify as an atmospheric record. No, this record was good. From front to back, just some brilliant cuts. You Without End is a great song. Canary Yellow is a great song. But I think that my two favorite songs on the album were the songs that had the least amount of metal in them. Stay with me. The songs Near and Night People both utilized piano to a great extent, and it really helped the album. Not only that, but it utilized clean singing, which gave a very welcome break from the black metal style vocals that have been running through all the album. And the vocals, while not horrible, they were starting to grate after a little bit. So having those breaks of clean singing was actually kind of nice. But other than that, the vocals were really the worst part of the album. Like I said, they started to grate. It didn't work. It just did not work. And this album would have worked so much better as an instrumental album. You have a brilliant piece of music, and then you add all these dopey vocals to it, and it makes me want to... It makes me want to rip out my throat. There's not much else to say about that. The vocals were bad. Just bad. I had a lyric sheet up and I was having problems following them. I mean, if you're going to do vocals, at least attempt to make your vocals sound good. Like I said, Mirror and Night People were the only two songs on this entire album that had salvageable vocals on them because they were completely clean. And I know that in some metal circles, having clean vocals is akin to blasphemy. But I don't buy into that. I love clean vocals in metal. And those two songs took it to the next level. The other songs were beautiful musically. Vocally, they were awful. Remove the bad vocals, and you would have a great, great album here. Album of the year contender, definitely. But sadly, the vocals being purely bad knocked it back a peg or two. So I gotta give Deafheaven's Ordinary Corrupt Human Love an 89 out of 100 on the YPS scale. Great album musically, would have worked so much better as an instrumental album. Something like God is an Astronaut with all that atmosphere and all of just this wonderful stuff that you could sort of get lost in. You know, it's one of those albums that you could put in while you're driving and just drive through like the country. I live out in the country here in Tennessee, and it's one of those albums that I would just pop into my CD player and just drive around and get lost in the music. Maybe not get lost while I'm driving, but get lost in the music. And sadly, the vocals take away from that atmosphere. I mean, you're listening and it's just this beautiful stuff. And then all of a sudden, the vocals hit you and it doesn't work. And you're just sitting there and you're like, why? I know Deafheaven has been a divisive band in the metal genre over the last few years. Some people think they're overrated. Some people think they're awesome. I'm not going to jump into that debate because this is the only thing I've ever heard by them. But, yeah. Love the music on the album. Vocals, you need to have a lot of work done on them. Okay, now that that is done, we can move on to Automata 2. Of course, the second part of the Automata series of releases by Between the Buried and Me. I don't know if you could call this an album. I don't know if you could call Automata 1 and 2 an album, or if you could call them a series of releases. There's a part of me that's, this isn't an album. It's two separate releases. But then there's a part of me that's like, you slide them together, and 1 through 10, boom. You know? You put all the tracks together, and it would be an album. But then there's that other part of me that goes, it's not an album. So that debate rages on internally. But what I can say is that Automata 2 is definitely better than Automata 1 was. And if you have not seen my review of Automata 1, go check it out. It starts off with the proverbial bellow. The proverbial bellow is 13 minutes and 29 seconds long. Normally, for those of you who've watched my reviews in the past, you know I jump all over bands for having songs that I feel are way, way, way too long. But there are some times when bands have songs that are this long and they work, and this is one of those times because the music never gets bland. The music never gets boring. There's always something new to listen to. There's always a different style that's being thrown in. It's like slide after slide after slide in a really, really cool PowerPoint presentation. You know, and every slide is just something, holy cow, whoa, this is so cool to look at. Only in this case, it's something really cool to listen to. Then they go to the second two songs, Glide and Voice of Trespass. Glide and Voice of Trespass might be two of my favorite songs I've ever heard, bar none, period, through any genre. I love jazz. I love jazz influences in metal, and it's so amazing to hear that influence go through, especially at the end of the song Glide. The beginning of the song Glide is interesting with the accordion and the the slower timing and sort of the dance kind of thing, you know, sort of like a waltzing kind of thing, and then it goes through a rougher section of the song, which is interesting, and then at the end, Blake Richardson just kicks up this beat on his drum kit, and I'm just sitting there like, yes, 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 and then they go into Voice of Trespass, and they keep doing it. I got scared they were going to end at the end of Glide, and then they were going to just go into boring, run-of-the-mill prog metal in Voice of Trespass, but they keep going with it through Voice of Trespass, and I'm like, yes, yes, this is what Automata 1 needed. It's so refreshing, it is so interesting, and it's so cool to listen to. It's just wonderful, you know? It's just, you're sitting there and you're just like, and then you're dancing along, and then all of a sudden, midway through the song, bam, they're back into prog metal territory, and it's just great. The final song, The Grid, that was kind of a little bit of a disappointing end to the album. It was just sort of, you know, straight up prog metal, which I was coming down off of my jazzy, you know, high there with Voice of Trespass. I was like, this is such a good song, and then it hits The Grid, and I'm like, oh. So, anyway, but Glide and Voice of Trespass, definitely a couple of songs of the year so far as metal is concerned for me. Proverbial Bellow would be thrown into that list as well. But overall, this is a good album. Automata 2 is. It's definitely better than Automata 1. I don't know. You know, there's really nothing else to say about it. I mean, you had 10 songs released this year by Between the Buried and Me. You had 6 released on Automata 1. You had 4 released on Automata 2. Automata 1 was just kind of confusing and just sort of all over the place. It was brilliantly done musically. I'll say that. Had some really cool stuff on it. But the vocals were just do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. You know, Tommy Rogers Jr. didn't know whether he was growling or singing or doing anything. But on Automata 2, the vocals seem to they have a lot more direction. There are clear passages in between the growling, you know, the low vocals, and the actual singing. There's clear distinction, and that is what makes the vocals work on this album. On the first one, it didn't. Here on Automata 2, it does. And it really, really, really helps. So, Automata 2 gets a 90 out of 100 on the YPS scale. Gets one more point than Automata 1, and I'll definitely be considering Automata 2 for album of the year, if you want to even call it an album. I mean, it's got a pretty good length on it, but that's just because they go forever. But there's only 4 songs on it, so you know, I guess Bell Witch released that album last year was 1 song. It was an hour long on it, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is like doom metal album of the year." And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, I can't sit through this. It's an hour long. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's an amazingly done album musically, but I can't sit for an album. I cannot commit myself to an hour for 1 song. You know, gotta chop it up. Gotta get some breaks. I can get that song could have been like, you know, track 1, track 2, track 3, and blah, blah, blah on down the line. You know, split it up and make it 10 tracks. But don't give me 1 song that's just an hour long and expect me to sit there and actually take the time to listen to just 1 song all the way through. An album with 10 songs, sure. 1 song, no. That was my only criticism of Bell Witch. I thought they released a brilliant album in Mirror Reaper. It was gorgeous. So, Deafheaven and Between the Buried and Me releasing 2 excellent albums. Next week, Powerwolf Sacrament of Sin is coming out. I can't wait for it. Should be awesome. And I will definitely be having a review of that. So, hope you all have a great one, and I'll see you on down the pike.